I'm Riley Patillion. I'm a PhD candidate in the departments of both chemistry and education. I go between each at UBC Okanagan, and I am very grateful to be here today because not only was I that one little Canadian dot on that map we saw at the beginning, but that was the Vancouver campus, and I'm at the Okanagan campus, which is 400 kilometers, 300 something miles to the right into the middle of the province. So anytime I have interactions with the Vancouver campus about CIRTL, I get really excited, but this is even beyond that. So thanks for having me. Today I am talking about my project I was working on this year of identifying essential factors in producing effective and engaging instructional videos, both aspects there. A little bit of background, the first year chemistry curriculum at UBC Okanagan is blended in the sense that we have a mixture of traditional lectures and active learning lectures, so case studies, guided inquiries, flipped classrooms. And for our flipped classrooms where we teach ahead of time and practice in class, the way we deliver our content to our students at home is through instructional videos. So this project is looking at what made our videos effective and what made our videos engaging, or good for learning and good for engagement. So those are my two research questions. Which factors are most crucial to maximizing student learning and which factors are most crucial to maximizing student engagement? So learning would be more quantitative. This student understands the concept better and can test better with it. In engagement, they actually feel better about learning. They are engaged with the video. They don't just quit 2 minutes out of it. So we have talked about, or I have published about this before, our manuscript on the instructional videos and what they are. They're special to our university. A complaint that students had with other instructional videos is that it's not necessarily in the scope of our curriculum, but because we made these ourselves in-house, they are embedded in the curriculum. In the video, it says last class you did this, next class you did this. The topics are very specific for what they need to know for our class. And it's not like if you just look up a video on Crash Course or Cont'd Academy where you look at a topic, but sometimes they go in a scope, out of scope. So this is very focused to our curriculum. And there have been plenty of studies before for the best do's and don'ts of instructional videos. But this study serves to rank them. What's the best bang for your buck? What should you focus your time on doing? Backgrounds about the video. They are fun. They are colorful. We called them Mind Over Matter. This all started because I had a hobby of making really stupid videos with my friends growing up. So that's where my digital background comes from. And then I fell in love with teaching and I got to combine those two passions. So I'm very fortunate for that. But what you'll see here is this is a little cartoon of the course instructor. He was really mad when we made the hair gray, but it is what it is. You'll notice that the three segments here are in a triangle. In chemistry, we have this very famous teaching and learning concept called Johnstone's triangle. And what Johnstone says as part of this triangle is that chemistry is a hard topic to learn for three reasons. One, you need to understand the symbols of chemistry. Two, you need to understand what's happening at the microscopic level. And three, you need to understand what's happening at the macroscopic level, so the actual physical changes you see with your eyes. So for those three reasons, it's quite difficult. So we mirrored those within our videos with three different segments. To the lab is where the instructor goes to the lab and does the macroscopic experiment. Let's get small. We have these little molecular animations for the microscopic. And the Mighty Pen, it's where we have a little screencast segment where the instructor's off screen and it's just a pen on paper kind of Khan Academy sort of thing. So the video goes between the instructor speaking at you and these three segments, as well as we have some embedded interactive questions. So as the instructor is speaking, he will check your understanding, reinforce it, or ask you to apply the concept. You can click the answers on screen. If you get a question wrong, he'll tell you why you're wrong and let you try again. If you get it right, he will affirm you, congratulate you, make you feel good about yourself, and the video will continue. So the methods we use to study the engagement and learning aspects are strictly qualitative for the study. So various qualitative methods were used to investigate the student appreciation of various instructional aspects. So in the first study we did, we identified all the things the student liked about it. And on this study, we're going to ask them what's the best out of these. So the interactivity, that's the embedded questions that students can click on. The animations, so that's the microscopic of the triangle. The instructor qualities was a big hit. The instructor is famously enthusiastic and flamboyant and present on screen. Students tend to enjoy and a few disdain, but majority wins. Screencasts, so some people like the Khan Academy kind of vibe. And to study these things, we started off with a survey, basic Likert, how much do you appreciate these things, as well as ranking. So in the survey, you can drag and drop these aspects and rank them. And then we did some follow-up semi-structured interviews to get the students to elaborate on the responses and really dig down deep what's motivating them for those responses. The ranking results, so these are weighted rankings. So if you assigned it first, it was worth more than you've assigned it second, third, fourth, fifth. And the first columns are for learning, the second columns are for engagement. First off, I'd like to point out that ranks 1 and 2 are the same but opposite for both learning and engagement. So number 1 for learning was the interactive questions. That's the check-in for reinforcement throughout the video. So like I said, you get immediate feedback with those questions. Students will click on the screen. It will take you to a different part of the video where the instructor tells you specifically what you were just thinking and why that's wrong and what you have to change in your thought process for the right answer. Gives you another attempt and you're stuck in that loop until you get the answer right. So that was number 1 for learning, but also number 2 for engagement. And that's because if you're watching the video and the question pops up and you weren't paying attention, you can't keep watching the video until you get the question right. So you have to go back and rewatch it or just keep answering the questions. So that helps them stay engaged. And apparently having a loud person on screen talking at you, the personality, the voice, the tone of voice, enthusiasm is most important for engagement. So when you're making your instructional videos, no monotone, have your coffee first, do whatever you have to do to be in a good mood before you hit that record button. And apparently it helps for learning as well. 3, 4, 5 are the same for learning and engagement. I'm going to talk about rank 5 though. Demonstrations for learning, so that's a macroscopic. We'll be talking about a concept like collision theory if you're familiar with chemistry. And we'll go to the lab and show you an experiment. That does not help the student learn collision theory. They've already learned it. The application isn't the same as learning the concept. It's interesting, but it's not part of the instructional video. And a lot of feedback we got was, get the demonstration of the video, it makes it longer, I don't care about it, put it in a separate video for those who actually want to see the application of their concept. And engagement, number 5, was actually the screencast. So it was decent for learning, but not good for engagement. Having just like the Khan Academy pen on paper is useful, but not fun. Then I quoted some themes for our semi-structured interviews. Interactive questions was the most talked about thing. These were all in positive light. The first time we did it, there was some negative because we had some kinks to work out with them. But you can see animation, instructor, screencaster, all those are other common themes. But what's new is color, practice questions, and transitions were mentioned a lot. Color, having the bright, vibrant colors apparently makes it more engaging. There was also a few things where students, and this is very interesting in chemistry, would say that colors relate to specific topics. Like if they saw the color red, they would think, oh, this is an acid or an electrophile. And they would make these random, not random, but interesting associations in their head. So I think that's something worth pursuing further. Practice questions, students just ask for more practice questions at the end to keep practicing. And transitions. So earlier I said part of the triangle, we had these 3 segments. Instead of just like blipping to each segment, we had like a 2-second animation of the little instructor avatar jumping over to the next segment. And that little 2-second pause, the students said like gave them like some breathing room, some time to like reflect on what just happened before jumping into the next section. So that was interesting as well. Reflection. So the most bang for your buck here is if you want your students to learn more from these instructional videos is you have them practice their questions during the video. You embed the questions. There are a few ways to do that. Some of them you have to pay for, but your media team at your university should be able to help you out with that. Or I can talk about that more in questions. And yeah, be happy on camera. Show that you're passionate about the concept, and students should reflect that attitude. So don't spend so much time making your screencasts if you're not going to be lively and supportive with embedded questions. And throughout this research project, I came from a wet lab background before I went to education. So I learned a lot about the recruiting process and the importance of well-delineated research timelines. Because if you miss a semester, guess what? You can't do your research project for another year. So education research, qualitative research is quite different than the wet lab. Any questions? There is my email, and I'm free to talk to you for the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
My TAR project I did last semester in an introductory biochemistry course, and I was interested in looking at how students may value and use drawing to learn biochemistry. And so what you're seeing here is a picture of a Purkinje neuron that was actually drawn by Ramon E. Cajal, and my own research studies neurons. And so I think it's fascinating that all throughout history of science, we use drawing and visual representations in order to visualize and communicate things that naked eye. And here we go. And so my TAR question was looking at drawing as a study technique for students and figuring out how much they value drawing to study biochemistry, and then how does drawing promote their learning of biochemistry. And the class that I was doing this project in was another large lecture group, so 700 students in this class. And so I really wanted to tackle the challenge of integrating this more interactive learning strategy into a large course, because much of our course so far before I joined the teaching team was asynchronous lectures that were recorded, and students would watch like a straight 50 minutes of videos and then take 4 exams throughout the semester. And so one of the challenges that I wanted to address in this large course is that in biochemistry, we can't easily see things at the molecular level. And typically when we're presenting things on slides to students, they're on separate slides. And so this often lacks connections, and drawing is one way that we can help bridge that gap in order to connect concepts and help students understand how to communicate biochemical concepts. And so the learning outcomes for my TAR project were, 1, to communicate scientific concepts and mental models as a way to study and learn biochemistry. And then 2 more material specific learning outcomes were tackling a transamination reaction, which is a typical thing that's taught in intro biochem courses during nitrogen metabolism, and then showing how nitrogen are metabolized through a metabolic cycle called the urea cycle. And so literature supports the use of drawing, and I wanted to test that out in this course. And so the design for my project that I used were pre and post Likert questions. So the question was, how likely are you to use drawing as a study technique for biochemistry? And then I had optional drawing activities that followed my 4 approximately 10-minute lecture videos. And so these were optional and ungraded. 1 was drawing a transamination reaction. 1 is tracking the nitrogen in the urea cycle. And the 3rd is a patient scenario with an enzyme deficiency. And I actually used this patient scenario to bookend the lecture. So I started with kind of a mystery we were going to solve with the knowledge that we learned during the lesson. And then at the end, the students had the challenge to solve this patient scenario. So students would submit drawings to Canvas. I would grade and give these students feedback on their drawings. And then I'd identify student misconceptions and errors that students would frequently make, and then make a video key going through each activity. Students then answered the post-class Likert question, and then I had lots of stuff to assess and analyze. So a few quantitative things were pre and post Likert data. I looked at post-lecture quiz scores, as well as the unit exam scores. And then I had a large number of student drawings that allowed me to look through which students were really grasping the concept through their drawings, and which students still were having some misconceptions that I could communicate to them prior to them having to take an exam. And what I found is that students value drawing as a study technique for biochemistry. And so for the pre and post Likert data to the question of how likely are you to use drawing as a study technique for biochemistry, you'll notice that the definitely and very group pretty much didn't change from pre and post. And I didn't necessarily expect for this one lecture that I gave in this course to change people's mind necessarily, but I think this underscores the fact that over half of the class is already using drawing as a study technique for biochem. And that emphasized to me that using drawing as an instructor, as a way to model and connect a lot of these concepts, is really important, especially because students are already using drawing as a study technique. And several students gave some unsolicited email feedback, which is always really encouraging as an instructor. So one student said, I I found your applied lecture approach to be very engaging. I also found great benefit in the checkpoint activities, especially those that involved drawing. And then drawing out concepts helped me understand the concepts better and helped me remember them. And on that note, I found that participation in drawing activities did help students achieve learning outcomes. And so up here on the top left, we have an example of a correct drawing submission where the student drew the reaction they were asked to draw, labeled all of the molecules, circled the nitrogen as it moves through this reaction, and correctly identified the product in the question. Drawings also allowed me to identify common errors. And so this is one drawing where the student mislabeled the product and some of the molecules and didn't quite complete the rubric for this activity. And so these errors would help me then address them prior to the students taking the exam. And then on the exam, this is the question they were given, and 87% of the class got this question correct and identified the correct reaction type and products. And I want to point out that of the 42 students who got the question incorrect, only 2 of them had done the drawing. So the majority of students who participated in this optional drawing activity got this question correct. Student participation in drawings also correlated with increased exam scores. And so you can see from 0 to 100 exam scores here, and then the number of students in each exam score group. And as you get higher in each exam score group, there's a larger percentage of students who submitted the drawing activity. And there's definitely caveats here because I also do believe, and this is something I hope to test in future directions as well, that potentially the A+ range students in this exam score group may have just been more likely to do the drawing activity. However, it is a trend in the positive direction that drawings do correlate with increased exam scores. And so in conclusion, I found that students really value drawing as a study technique. And so this is something that I'm incorporating. I already incorporate in lectures using the iPad and Apple Pencil, which is wonderful during online learning. And I also found that participating in drawing activities did help students achieve learning outcomes and helps them on their exams as well. And in reflection, I was encouraged by the engagement from students in a lot of these optional activities. So I didn't expect as much engagement as I got. And so I think students are really eager to have more of these interactive learning strategies to break up some of this content in an intro biochem course. And next time I implement this teaching approach, I would like to include a peer review component. So I'd like to do more of almost a think, pair, share or small group work so that students can review each other's drawings, because it does take a lot of time to go through and give feedback to students individually in this large lecture course. And I think that research also supports learning from each other as well. And so that's what I'll do next time. And so I want to thank the 2 faculty I worked really closely with for this course, Dr. Mario Pinella and Dr. Richard Amasino. I want to thank the Delta program at UW-Madison and the cohort of other graduate students and postdocs. We all did our TAR projects together last semester. And then I want to thank Devin Wixon, who is the Associate Director of Delta at UW, for all of her mentorship as well.
I'm happy to be here, and today I'm going to present about the use or the utility of infographics to scaffold students' writing development for undergraduate students. My name is Undra Mamuja, and I'm a 3rd-year doctoral student in the School of Education at University of California, Irvine. So in this study, what I am exploring is this instructional approach of integrating infographic as an authentic genre to scaffold undergraduate students' writing development. The way how the infographic is integrated in this process-based writing is prior to the traditional assignment. And our research goal, my research goals are to understand the ways in which undergraduate students used their infographic, their created infographics to support the writing process. I also wanted to find out their own experiences and perceptions of using or engaging in this kind of multimodal approach in the traditional or process-based writing. The research context is that it's an upper division writing course in a large university in California, and that's University of California, Irvine. And the course is situated in the School of Education, and it's a discipline-specific writing course. My research question 1 was, in what ways students use their infographics in composing their traditional writing of research paper? And second research question was, what do students find beneficial about using infographics in process-based writing? And the last research question was to find out about the challenges students may have experienced while engaging in this type of instructional approach. This undergraduate writing course uses the universal or draws on the universal design for learning, highlighting the importance of providing a range of resources, tasks, and experiences, recognizing the variability in what motivates students to write. And also, it integrates this multimodal way of composing or communicating, engaging students in creating infographics as an additional way to communicate their ideas is a method of promoting exposure to and experiences of multiple resources, digital tools, and multiple modes and modalities. The overall pedagogy or the right assignments that the students were to complete in this course was first the infographic situated right before the traditional research paper writing, and then students go from research paper to opinion editorial, and all these different genres are on the same interest-driven topics students choose at the beginning of the writing course. We collected student artifacts, the revised draft of the infographic, and first draft of the research paper to see to what extent the students are using their infographic or how they organize their ideas in the infographic to the research paper. I also collected student survey and open-ended reflections that they wrote after completing their infographic and the research paper, and at the end of the course, and to see specifically to find out their experience, perceptions, and challenges, benefits. My research question 1 was, in what ways do students use their infographics in composing their research paper? And I did a qualitative content analysis looking at the infographic and the research papers based on 5 rhetorical moves that are observed both in infographics and the research paper. Those include topic, focus, and key points, order of ideas, and the overall structure. I identified 6 patterns, and the first major pattern was that 41% of the students in this class used their infographic very strictly as an outline. Both ideas and structures were replicated in the research paper and followed the same order. About 23% of the students used their infographic as a springboard, and that is the research paper adds on ideas and goes beyond what was presented in the infographic. And about 18% of the students, infographics used to identify key points, but these key points were developed in different orders in the research paper. And 9% infographic used to identify key points. The paper focuses on 1 or 2 major key points, but did not explore other key points that were presented in the infographic. And of 10%, that's about 2 students in the class actually produced different contents for both infographic and the research paper. The research question 2 and 3 explore students' experiences and perceptions. And all students who responded, that's 19 out of 22 students in this class, agreed or strongly agreed infographics helped them write their research paper. Analyzing their open-ended reflection and survey questions, I identified 3 major themes, and these include making rhetorical moves, lessening affective constraints, and reducing cognitive loads. most of the students reported things like the infographic helped them organize their thoughts, identify key points, and find the focus, and as well as express their ideas in more concise form. For example, in the blue here, representing this making rhetorical moves, students said, creating my infographic made me realize what I really wanted to focus on. Creating the infographic helped me organize my main ideas. My main points were easily displayed, clear organization appeared. The second theme was lessening affective constraints, and these were students reporting reduced anxiety and boosting confidence, as well as meaningful engagement in an activity that is to most of them a new task. For example, as students said, writing long papers tends to be intimidating, but the infographic helped shape the paper and it made me feel confident going into the research paper. And another student said it was new, but a lot of fun. The third theme was reducing the cognitive loads, and that included planning and ease of task, visualization, and as well as linguistic constraint, or reducing the linguistic constraints. One student said, I was able to get to the point without having to worry about providing evidence and sounding very scholarly. And a few challenges was that navigating the infographic websites, and those websites often come with free signup, but the free signup has limited access. That was one of the other challenging aspects was selecting key points, presenting information in a concise way, and structuring and organizing ideas. And finally, just a reflection is that we know that writing is very difficult and complex task, and so is teaching writing. So effective and efficient scaffolding of students' writing skills and development is important. And also today, literacy is redefined to include a lot, multimodal communication, and there's the profound and far-reaching effect of an increasingly digital environment on communication forms, practice, and values. So this infographic assignment helped, kind of tap into that multimodal communication. I would like to acknowledge or end my presentation acknowledging that this project was funded by UCI's Education Research Initiative mini grant, and my collaborators are Dr. Janelle Krishnan and Dr. Penelope Collins from UCI. Thank you.
My project was working with introductory biology labs. So can student perceptions of course value change using a career skills-based approach in an introductory biology lab to improve overall course performance? So a lot of parts here. Generally, the outcome that we're sort of addressing and trying to get to is, can we improve student performance by increasing students' perceptions of course value through this integration approach of talking about career skills during these lab exercises. So the general objectives we have here, just to break it down even further, is first to measure student perceptions of career preparedness as a result of our implementation or intervention strategy, to then evaluate student perceptions of expectancy, value, and cost. So this is based off of expectancy value theory tied to student motivation and how that is linked to student success. And we're really focused again on just this value attribute as part of this project. And then the third objective is ultimately to analyze student performance as a result of our intervention strategy. So to provide some context for the course that I'm working in, it's a large introductory cell and molecular biology lab, 611 students total. There were 2 instructors that were implementing this intervention in their sections. So each of these instructors had one comparison group and 1 or 2 classes where they're doing this intervention strategy. And then all the other instructors served as sort of another set of controls of the other 484 students. So this is the base of where we're working with. So to talk a little bit more about our intervention approach, we really want to get students to reflect on what they were doing in the lab and how that applied towards different career skills that were deemed important by the career services as part of Michigan State. So there's a total of 16 career skills that are important and that we wanted to work with our students on. And so all the classes had the same in-class activities. What we did for our intervention sections was we talked about 3 specific career skills we wanted them to focus on as part of that day's activities. And at the very end of it, had them choose one of those career skills and write a short reflection note card about how what they did in lab tied to those career skills they were developing. So that was one aspect we had them doing. The other one was a more detailed career skill development report. So halfway through the semester, after going over all these career skills in lab, had them choose one specific career skill they wanted to work on for the rest of the semester. And at the very end, write another sort of follow-up to how well it worked for them, being more attentive to these career skills and whether or not they succeeded in progressing that through the course of the semester. And then our assessment for these was largely devoted to student pre and post course surveys, and then looking at overall course GPAs at the end of it. So some of the results that we had from that, out of the 16 career skills, communication and contributing to a team were positively impacted by our intervention. So these surveys were set up on Likert scale, and we had between our control groups or comparison sections, I'll get the laser pointer out here. We saw an increase in our intervention sections where they saw themselves building in communication and building and contributing to a team. However, all the other skills didn't really see a large bump in efficiency or proficiency for the students. So it's nice to see that our intervention was providing some benefit for the students in this way. And when we looked further into course value and course outcome, we didn't really see many changes elicited based on our intervention. So we asked them questions such as, in general, I find biology labs to support my future goals. This was tailored towards addressing or measuring their value. And again, in our intervention sections, pre and post didn't see a change there. And overall course GPA, we didn't see changes between our comparison and our intervention sections. So as far as reflections and implications go for the project, we saw a positive impact on both communication and contributing to a team as a result of our approach. However, we didn't see significant changes in student perception of value and didn't see a shift in course outcomes either. However, on reflection, I still think there's benefit to thinking intentionally about course design and how we as instructors can attempt to shift the scale, build more value perceptions in our students to help those course outcomes, and that potentially further integration of career skills and course design may be one way to do that. So with that, I have my acknowledgements here. Thank my project mentors. I had a few of them, Dr. John Stoltzfus, Dr. Bethany Hiat, and Dr. Phil Deletka. And I'll also thank the FAST community that I was working with, Dr. Rick Campa, big help with that, and all of my other fellows.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janani, and as Colleen said, I'm a graduate student at Cornell University. Last semester, I was a teaching assistant for a public health microbiology classroom, and last semester, as we all know, was this frantic shift to the hybrid and online-only models of learning for many of us. And so this study was motivated by a desire to understand how student experiences vary between these two classroom modalities, online versus in person, and specifically, for the online-only group, how usage or non-usage of video cameras impacts their experience and engagement with their peers. And so up top, you can see the 2 questions that I just sort of elaborated on. How does being in a hybrid classroom affect student experience? Are you experiencing the course content and the classroom differently if you're a student attending in person versus online? And if you are attending via Zoom, what is the role of camera usage in online learning, right? And so the course name was BioMe 2500, Public Health Microbiology, and our assessment was done using an end of semester survey, and I've put in 2 references down here. The Castelli and Chevari paper in particular was really important in terms of laying the foundation for us in thinking about camera usage and the different factors that could be affecting camera usage in students. And then the second paper, it's more of a conference presentation, but I happen to know the authors because they're also from Cornell. And we got some ideas about thinking about group work and how to structure group activities and measure those dynamics from that work. And so The little icons here kind of show you the 5 areas, the assessment areas that the survey focused on. The first was learning preferences, and this is us trying to understand how students' learning preferences. Are they social learners? Do they prefer to work independently? How does that affect their participation in the classroom? Then we talked about group behavior self-assessment, which is when we ask students to rate their own contributions to groups. And you'll see when I describe the class structure, that the class was structured as a flipped classroom model with a lot of active learning assignments. So the first 10 to 15 minutes of the class would be spent on lectures and recapping the readings and the content that students were asked to prepare before class. And then the bulk of the class was really spent in these little home groups of about 4 to 5 students working on assignments and solving problems together. So we asked students to tell us how much they thought they were contributing to these group discussions, about the same as their peers, less than their peers, or more than their peers. We also factored pandemic concerns into our survey, understanding that the last year has just been a very difficult and stressful one, and that has affected the learning experience for both students and instructors. For the online only group, we had questions about camera use patterns. How frequently did they use their camera? What were the reasons why they didn't use their camera, and so on. And finally, we had some open-ended questions where students could tell us about the benefits and the challenges of their chosen modality. And here are the results. In the interest of time, I'm only presenting 3 broad results, but I'm happy to expand on any of the other categories if people have questions. So the first result, which was kind of heartening to know, was that class modality did not have an effect on student exam performance. As far as grades go, we didn't see a difference between students who took the class in person or students who attended online, which I'm hoping will be a sigh of relief for those of us who were forced to change our instructional modalities sort of overnight. We also found that that perception of self-contribution to group discussions that I mentioned was actually associated with a higher mean grade, especially for online groups. And it's interesting because I interpret that in 2 different ways. Maybe students who were more prepared and did the class readings were able to contribute more to the group discussions, and they ended up doing better on the exams. Or maybe speaking up in discussions and helping their classmates learn actually boosted students' sense of their own competence and helped them perform better in exams. I don't know yet. That's something I would tease out in a future study, I think. And finally, as far as the camera usage question goes, overwhelmingly, we found that camera use was peer-driven. So 94% of students reported having their cameras off because nobody else in the breakout room had their camera on, which is really interesting because when you look at the second statistic there, it says that 50% of students reported higher engagement with classmates that they could see. And the thing that came up in our pandemic concerns assessment was this group at least did not have any concerns in terms of access to technology, concerns about privacy or living situation, etc. So moving on to some reflections and potential recommendations for hybrid course design. We would encourage camera use, but in this course, we didn't make it mandatory, just keeping in mind all of these concerns that I just mentioned: access to technology, access to internet, differences in living situations, and privacy concerns. Breakout rooms can spark metacognition, and I haven't shown this data, but this came from our qualitative analysis of the open-ended responses. But students mentioned retaining ideas better, learning concepts better, and clarifying confusing concepts better in these breakout room interactions, even on Zoom. So breakout rooms, we saw, can spark metacognition, but they do need to be tailored to the online environment. And so one example of the way we did this in this course was to increase familiarity in the breakout room groups by having the same home groups. So students were placed into different home groups, and those home groups stayed consistent throughout the course. And so this helped them get over that initial barrier of Zoom awkwardness and introducing themselves to new people again and again. And they were able to speak up more, turn on their cameras more, and just participate a little bit more when they knew the people that they were in breakout room groups with. And with that, I want to thank Susan Merkel, who was a co-instructor for this class, but who also worked with me on the survey, as well as the Center for Teaching Innovation at Cornell, and especially Dr. Amy Curtis, who was instrumental in helping us get IRB approval and pointing us to the right resources to design this survey. I will stop. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or via email if you have questions.